Okay, people are joining in now faster. We'll have 1 minute, 1 more minute before we start.
How many do we have now?
Around 40.
All right.
We should have eventually around, if numbers are the usual ones, around 100. There's 40 now. Okay, I think I'll start with introductions, and we'll gain some time, and then we can start the conversation. I don't want to delay this any further. Thanks a lot to everyone for joining this webinar. This is one of the webinars that we've been producing around data science. Just as an introduction, in this case, we have the pleasure to be discussing this topic with two industry leaders, which I'll introduce now shortly, and one of the experts, and we'll have an open debate around how to roll out AI, what different strategies do we have, what are the challenges, and above all, how to create impact from AI. So first of all, I would like to introduce Outvise for those of you that are not 100% aware. It's a global, we have built up a global network of experts around telecoms, media, and technology. This expert reaches out to over 30,000 freelancers. A number of them are data science related. We have around 8 roles identified in data science that you can see in our homepage. We call them segments. For each of these roles, there's a description of what the role does, of some case studies, some examples of experts that we might have. We operate across many countries, 140, and we're usually able to deliver quite fast, great candidates to you to serve your needs in around 48 hours. We have a number of clients, corporate clients, industry clients such as the ones we have now in this panel, and also a number of consulting firms that we work together with. I'm Eusebi, I'm the CEO of Outvise, and my former background is in telecoms. I'm as an engineer, but then mainly as a management consultant. We had the pleasure to work together with one of our guests here, with Mario. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the 3 guests today. Mario, and I'll introduce, and then I'll let Mario and Fahim and Dennis briefly introduce themselves, right? So Mario is the head of big data and advanced analytics at Vodafone, has been working in the Middle East extensively and also management consulting. Fahim used to collaborate as an expert with us, but now is VP for data strategy at ProSieben in Germany. And Dennis is one of the experts that we have the pleasure to have in our network and does specific work around data science, has been working in a number of companies, KPMG, Celonis, and now has his own practice. So having introduced Mario, Fahim, and Dennis, I'll hand over now to the session itself and allow them to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll have, this discussion will not have a PowerPoint presentation. It will be more based on a round table where I'll be moderating, and then any questions you might have, please share with us and we'll answer at the end of this session. Okay, so I'm going to stop presenting and I'm going to provide a bit more context. I hope the image is clear. Yeah, great. So a while back, we launched a data maturity survey. We hit upon 4 main areas. The strategic view of a company in terms of data, the people readiness in terms of data science, the technologies available to manage data science and exploit it in real time, and the availability of proper data in the right quality. So it was very nice to see those insights in terms of how ready companies are. In this case, we have 2 companies that have or had initially different degrees of maturity in those different aspects. And you'll see 2 different strategies on how to deal with rolling out AI across these 4 main aspects. So Before we start the session, Mario, please, if you can make a little introduction, Fahim and Dennis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mario Nolla. I come to the data science and big data analytics area from a weird angle, because I'm not an engineer, I'm not a statistician, I'm not a mathematician. I'm an economist by trade, and I did my MBA, and I started 20 years ago doing management consulting. After a few projects for the telecom sector, but fully focused on strategy. Sadly, I found myself involved in big data projects or analytics projects 15 years ago. It was a revelation for me, and for the last 15 years, I've been involved in analytics projects from different angles. From the consulting angle, I've been working for operators such as Etisalat and Vodafone, like you saw on my introduction page, but also for vendors like Flytex, that was providing real-time interaction software for telecom providers. So it's a different angle, because I'm much more closer to the business than to the technical side. So basically, my approach has always been more focused on how to get actually economic and viable impact to it. So hopefully that's an angle review that I will be able to convey and provide my view on during the session today.
Thank you, Mario. Fahim, please.
Can't hear you.
Fahim?
You're on mute.
Yes, now we can.
There you go. Still not used to telcos, obviously. Mario, I'm from the same weird angle as you are. I'm also an economist, and I also started long ages ago as management consultant. So maybe that angle is not so strange as it seems. But how did they end up in all this data strategy, AI area? It's basically that I was doing a lot of quantitative studies and projects and cases in my previous roles, and the classical way, I led a project for ProSieben, which was basically not so much in the area of AI, but rather in the area of data sourcing. Means like how to collect the right data to better understand our subscribers or our viewers. And from there onwards, the whole topic of, let's say, complex data questions arise for ProSieben, and I slipped into that role in which I am now. And basically, my current task is to, let's say, pick the right next best project for the group in the area of AI. And pick the next best right project means understanding what is important for the group, but also what is our skill set, what can we do actually, what is reachable, what is not a moonshot. And then hand over those topics to our colleagues who are at the end of the day going to program it and set up the algorithms and make a data product out of it. So that's how I came to AI, and I've always been working with Outvise, so it was very close, a short step to participate in this webinar. I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks for him. Our pleasure. Dennis, tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll shoot into the session.
Cool. Thanks, Eusebi. I'm not sure if I should say it, but I'm also economist by education. So probably it's not a weird thing at all. My studies were very quantitative driven, statistics, probability theory, operations research, econometrics. And just a couple of weeks ago when I was back home in Kiev, I was listening to some of the very old audio notes that I did from 2012. And I discovered that even then already I was pretty much deep into the subject of data science, more on the business side at the time. Then with time it changed quite a lot, and I gained a lot of practical skill in Python programming, SQL, and so on. And so far I have done about 30 projects in the area of AI, data science, process mining.
across the past 5.5 years, I would say, when I was more in the applied sphere, let's say. And for a bit more than a year, I've been having my company, EnterpriseAI Consulting. And during this time, I've been working on a pretty diverse range of projects and talking to literally hundreds of people about topics of data science and AI, how to build data teams, how to organize them, how to drive change, whether you should drive change in the organization or not, how to implement projects, make them successful, and all these fun stuff, as I call it. Well, in this webinar, I would like to share, let's say, the points that I have collected across many clients of mine, and try maybe to put the glasses of generalization, how we can generalize the learnings that we're going to be listening about in the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go straight into it. The first thing we're going to open is a discussion around how to set up the data science practice, right? Data science is not reporting, it's not advanced business intelligence, it's not, it's more about big numbers, algorithms, and automation. So Fahim, in your case, you come from an organization that was not necessarily very data-driven, and you had to drive a journey towards data-driven practices and functions. And at the core of this, it is what you call the ideation process, right? So explain to us a little bit how you managed this journey in ProSieben, a company that is not maybe as data-driven as we could think a telecom company.
Yes, that is absolutely the case. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that let's say broadcasting companies never had a real B2C relationship to its viewer in the old times, where we had only the broadcasting signal broadcasted, spread it out. We never had a real customer feedback or any type of connection, because like telcos have at least a billing relationship in the good old days. Now they have, of course, more relationships, but broadcasters didn't even have this. So this is why broadcasters and the whole entertainment industry is rather running on gut feeling than on numbers in terms of what is going to be successful and what is not going to be successful content. And coming from here, we had some limitations in understanding big data, limitations in having the right skills on board to process it, and also limitations in terms of available data to process, actually. So a lot of limitations and a lot of questions and a lot of new possibilities and new competition, aka Netflix and Amazon and so on and so on and so on and so on. So what we needed is to understand, out of the many things which would have been very necessary to do, which one is the most feasible and at the same time value generating thing or project we could do. And in order to do this, we set up a so-called value creation process, or you could name it anything. It's just some buzzwords, but the point is to have a funnel type of process. So in the beginning, you have lots of ideas which could be interesting for the group, and at the end, you will have only per year maybe 2 or 3 real projects you're gonna do. And how do you reach that point from, let's say, 150 more or less concrete ideas to 2 projects you do is the typical way of scoring, right? So you score in terms of what value would that idea generate, you score what resources you have, you score what resources are available in the market, or maybe tools you could buy so that you don't have it to build yourself, what data is available, and also always very much underestimated the aspect of change management. I hated it when I was consultant, and people told me it's a good idea, but we won't be able to implement it because people will be against it, and we would need a lot of change management. I always hated it, but now in that role internally, where I have to handle with the people, not only for one project but also afterwards. That's probably the biggest hurdle to convince people, let's say in a content area, who buy content, to use more data for their decisions instead of their, let's say, year-long experience. No one says that the machine is doing their work. It's absolutely not that. We are much far away from that. It's about making some suggestions to the machine and through data, which could be useful guidance for people who still do the decisions. So to answer your questions, we set up a process with a very rigorous scoring scheme to filter from ideas to concrete projects, and always being very transparent with top management and explaining them and letting them making the decision, so that they know if they bring up a new very important project, that another important project will then become slower or be stopped. So the answer is a process with a scoring model behind.
And this is it's been going on for a couple of years, right?
Absolutely. So the idea is, as always, ideas are nice, but to implement the process itself, it took us probably 1.5 years or so to just make it happen. So as I said in the beginning, data itself and data skills were spread over the organization. So we had to convince a lot of people, a lot of political parties to collaborate on that, and at the end of the day, the top management to accept and make this new process happen. And that only setup of the whole thing took 1.5 years, and then we could start to process actually the ideas which were supposed to be evaluated.
Great, thanks. So this is more a story about landing specific impact through a funnel process that is rigorously governed and measured to select the key priorities, 2 or 3 per year, and make management very aware of what is intended and what are we going to get from these ideas, and if we need to include another one, what we need to prioritize and drop, right? And this is a process that it takes a time. It takes a long time to build up, not only just change management, right? Thanks, Fahim. Mario has a different story. Mario entered a company that we all think, yeah, super data-driven, and with very high expectations of what we're going to do with data. Telcos are always thinking that they can do so many things with data, right? And in your case, the challenge was how to manage those expectations, no?
Yeah. Of course, in telecoms, it is a fact that we sit in on an incredible wealth of data. We have all sorts of data regarding our clients. Okay, even if we, for legal reasons, we use it anonymized, we know where they are, we know who they contact with, we have the billing relationship, which Fahim was mentioning. It's very important for many reasons. And sitting on that wealth of data, obviously all of the managers and all of the executives in telco companies, they have bought into the idea of setting up data-centric strategies and AI everywhere, and saying that they need to be data-driven. And the hype and the buzzword has been there for a number of years, with very high expectations. And obviously, you know, I was in that side some ago from the consulting side. All the management consultants are going to be making their cases in terms of, okay, you apply real time here, you apply data science there, and there's so much more value to get from here. So the typical telco organization or reasonably advanced telco organization, they have been investing on big data and AI resources for a number of years already. Okay, so they have invested in infrastructure, they have invested in setting up teams, and setting up those teams is not cheap. Okay, they are it's a scarce resource, and they pay a lot of money. So they invest heavily into setting up analytics and big data and AI capabilities. And they did that already a number of years ago. So more than expectations, oftentimes what you find is frustration. It's like, why is this not yielding the results that we've been promised and everything that we were expecting? Yeah. So because in the end, say, if we have even more richer data than the OTTs, the Googles and the Apples and the Amazons of the world, how can we see them exploiting all of this data and being much closer and much real time in the way that they interact with the customers, and we cannot. And that's where the reality strikes of what a telco organization is. Because yeah, telco, we have a lot of data, but telcos have been usually companies that have been set up many years ago with a lot of legacy. In many ways, there's two ways in which the legacy of the telco impacts the ability of these AI strategies to maximize the way that they operate. One is in the system. I said that they invested handsomely. Yeah, they invest in big data environment, either on the cloud or in house. They invest on the team with assumptions that suddenly, with that, you're going to turn into real time, which is one of the main and the key promises that you get. But the problem is that even if that piece of the puzzle is real time, what you have before and what you have after, they also have to be real time in order to be able to interact real time with the customer. As you can imagine, a telco operation has dozens, if not hundreds, of legacy systems where they have their sales and distribution data, their customer data, their operational data, the CRM data. Okay. Not every telecom operator has also invested in the fact of how do we compile, ingest all that data in real time. So the models that, yes, the models can, a big data environment can run models extremely fast with huge amounts of data and provide scores really fast. But if the data is 2, 3, 4 days old because you have legacy systems to aggregate and process the data, then yes, your models are real time, but the data is 2, 3, 4, 5 days old is not the same. And in the other side, if the systems that you're using to interact with your customers, your CRM systems, your front end that your agents have, they don't have the capability of interacting real time with the big data environment, what is the point? I mean, with an example, all right? I can have a recommendation model that tells me what is the best product for a client. But obviously, if it's an inbound call, the situation is not the same if the client calls complaining about a bill that if the client calls asking where the closest shop is. It's a completely different context. And not all of our front-end systems are able to interact backwards with the models so we can rerun and reprioritize what we say to a context. So it's not that often that you can find a whole environment that allows you to be able to operate in real data. That's the first challenge, okay? And I would say that the second challenge is organizational, because typically telecom organizations have been product-centric, and the marketing teams and the operational teams are very product-centric. And when that team that has been so expensive to set up is put in the middle of the organization, then all of these product-centric elements come to that team asking for what they need, thinking wrongly, you mentioned it at the beginning, Eusebi, that this is advanced AI or advanced analytics, not really understanding what it is, the kind of value that we need to add, and that is the other way around, that the strategies should get centric to outside, and we should be telling the team, the teams what they should be doing instead of them asking them the questions that they cannot solve, right? So yes, like you were said, the expectation is huge, and it's expectation that oftentimes has a monetary value into it. Even before you join, they say, okay, this is how much value I'm expecting this team to generate, and that's a challenge, yeah, because you need to understand, you need to make the organization understand that there is some not basic but fundamental issues and pillars of what you're doing that have to be done, and some of them are transformational within the organizations that have a long legacy of working in a certain way.
This is, as you can see, this is another example of a company that has invested significantly in technology. It has a vast amount of data available to process, but as many companies, it has legacy systems. Some things cannot be real time. Actually, you had to make a call, right? I mean, you had to interact with the technology side because it's a tough one, right? Because there are many legacy systems, many types of sources of data, or choose to go more into the business side, right? In terms of how you position yourself to serve your clients. And I believe you chose more the business side, right?
Yeah, by trade, like I said before, I came from a business side of it, but that's true. And look, maybe I was reflecting while I was speaking, and maybe I was sounding a little bit tragic in terms of all of these problems. But I was just mentioning what the challenges are, but the opportunities and the successes also have been many. Okay, and I think that one of the elements that have allowed the different teams that I think I have the privilege to lead to have success in what they were doing was precisely to choose to go closer to the business. Okay, understanding the pitfalls, but I truly believe that it's a key success factor to overcome those challenges that we were saying, right? Because in the end, that investment team, that if it's not close to the system, that team gets isolated and gets frustrated. Okay, and both the business and the big data team, they feel themselves just working on models and delivering things which are not adding value, right? So if you have to choose where to move the needle towards the business or towards IT, and we can discuss about pros and cons of it. And the main con of going towards business is that those IT requirements of being real time everywhere, they take longer if you choose to be closer to the business. But if you're closer to the business, at least the business understands much better what you're doing, why you are doing it, and in which way you can impact. And in the other side, your big data team, which in theory is people like, so to speak, let's put it on quotes, more nerdy, more, number driven. If you put them closer to the business, they understand why they're doing what they're doing and how their work is impacting the outcomes. And it ends up being easier to motivate them, right? When they see the results and the impact of what they do, right? So I think that once you get some sort of alignment and harmony between a commercial team and a big data team, the results start to flourish, okay? Because they have a more focused idea of what they need to get and how to get it. And there's an alignment and an understanding that allows you to get a lot of low-hanging fruits that don't need that full real time and so much data. So and you can initiate quite easily and quite fast short-term projects with high impact without needing to have all the pieces in place. But those short, small projects with high impact, they only succeed if there is a very close collaboration within the business and the big data team.
So there's a common thread there. Dennis, in your experience, the way you manage your clients, I believe also prioritizes, right, the business impact and the feasibility with the technology you have, instead of focusing on building up the technology, right? Tell us a bit more, Dennis, on your side. These two examples, how do they sound?
Sure, absolutely. So, well, one of the first things, pretty much every big company that I've ever spoke with thinks that they are slow in the data science implementation, no matter what industry they come from. It can be manufacturing, it can be insurance, professional services, you name it. Apart from maybe tech giants such as Google's and Microsoft's of the world. But generally speaking, it does take a while if you want to establish a data science practice. And the smaller projects that you can start with, they can take shorter time, of course. You can execute some of them in 2-3 months, depending on how quickly you get your hands on the data. And those also are the projects that I like doing first in the beginning if the organization is not very familiar with what data science can actually achieve. Mostly opportunity occurs on what I call departmental interfaces. It's a fancy way to say a couple of departments working together, essentially. This could be procurement and accounting, or sales and customer success, and things like that. And why opportunities occurred there, in my experience, is that, well, let's say one department has one system, another department has a different system, where they manage their whatever documents that they're working with. And there's often little to no communication between those systems. So many tasks are not automated. Sometimes people have to do work twice, and so on and so forth. So that's where the opportunity lies. And as I mentioned, sometimes you can execute those projects relatively quickly and without having a huge data strategy. And I can only second Mario's words about that. In these cases, you have to be very close, business and technology, both parts of the equation, because there is a tendency, I mean, maybe it's a bit stereotypical, but there's a tendency that IT departments are folks that are, let's say, sitting at their laptops and updating systems and, following that the databases are consistent and so on. But often they don't understand why a specific use case needs to be executed. And this lack of understanding, on one hand, it makes it more difficult technologically, but also it reduces the motivation of people. And well, motivation and incentivation is extremely important, because if you don't have those, nobody just doesn't want to do anything, frankly, at the end of the day. So I can only support that. And in my experience, there are also different kinds of organization of data science teams, which also impacts a lot how fast you can move. There's a centralized approach where we will have, let's say, head of data science that would be reporting to, let's say, CIO, sometimes CEO even, although it's rare. And they would have a centralized function that is doing data science tasks for all the departments. And on the other hand, you can have the decentralized approach or embedded approach, where the analysts and data scientists would sit with a department. They would still mostly have some kind of leader, head of data science, analytics, and so on, and would come together once every couple of weeks or months to share best practices and so on. And both have advantages and disadvantages. The embedded approach is generally faster to execute use cases because it's close to the business function, and the data scientist is within the team. They are an integral part of the team. So they can work faster, let's put it that way. Centralized approach is often better when you need access to resources, when you need quick user access to a database, for example. It's often easier to come through a centralized function. Or if you need to hire a new person, generally speaking, there will be larger budgets in decentralized data science functions.
I think on that topic, both Mario and Fahim also have a view how they've implemented it. We'll discuss this in the third section. Let's start with the second section, and I think we're going to have to speed up a little bit. I think we've lingered it a little bit too much, and we need to keep on timing. So the second part of the section is about how to create impact. So in the end, the name of the game is how much value do we create? Data native companies are very fast at rolling out algorithms and testing them out. The majority of the companies are not that fast, right? So in this case, to you, Mario, positive impact can be measured in many ways, no? More revenue, less costs. In the end, it's about defining the business goal and making sure you can measure it and checking if you've met that goal, right? So how do you define your goals? What's your goal here? How do you measure the impact in your company?
Look, I mean, in terms of goals and measuring, like you were said, there's different ways to measuring it, and many different KPIs that you can track. But in the end, upstream to management, you're still gonna have to go down to those two that you said. You're either gonna be having to prove that you created incremental revenues, okay, by what you do with your base management and how you manage the value of your clients, et cetera, either because you get more value of them or because you prevent them from leaving, etc. or you're going to have some way of measuring the costs savings that you're generating on any algorithm which is doing any optimization of operational processes, right? So upstream, it's pretty much straightforward. You're not going to have to waste around it. But those KPIs are extremely difficult to drill downstream, because then the responsibility gets very diluted, and then and there is a lot of sometimes, even if it's not done properly, even confrontation. Yeah. So basically, if you end up saying, okay, incremental revenue for our CDM campaigns, yeah, and then if those campaigns are not providing the right results, okay, the marketing team is going to be saying, hey, your models are not working. And the data science team is going to say, hey, my models are working because I see my AUC and I have a very high level of identification. Your campaigns are shit. Sorry for that. But you get that confrontation, right? So in the end, going down, you need to dissect intermediate goals that can pinpoint where the whole process of creating value it's failing, and being able to identify what you need to do in order to improve it. Is it a problem of your communication? Is it a problem of how your campaigns are designed? Is it a problem of the model? Is it a product of the data because we're getting too late? There's a number of places where it can fail. So you need to develop good measuring and tracking tools to be able to identify where it is. But even if you drill down, if you separate the KPIs and the tracking in order to be able to identify where you're failing, what also is necessary and needs to happen is that in order to measure the impact or the return or wherever it is, the KPI that the whole team is sharing, it is common, so everybody's in best. So because if you separate it and then you say, hey, big data team, in a churn model, all you need to worry about is on your misclassification matrix and maximize how good your predictions are. They're not going to care about the economic results, and they will keep on saying, oh no, my model is good, but your campaign is bad. You also need to have the data science team sharing, churn KPIs, sharing KPIs that motivates them to collaborate with the business. Okay, so if you have a model where you're trying to, for instance, increase the penetration of your mobile app, all right, that is it's a cost-saving project, because you know that you save a lot of costs managing your clients through the app more than from presential channels, right? So that costs, that KPI, maybe not the cost saving, but the percentage of app penetration, it's a KPI that should also impact the data science team, because it's not just a question of identifying, are you able to work with your business partner in order to really generate an impact, right? So they become complex measuring systems with a lot of numbers, with a lot of KPIs. It requires an effort into having somebody cooking and reporting all of those numbers and tracking all of those effects, but it's worth it in the end, because that's the way that you manage to have alignment with the business and a common goal and everyone moving towards something that has impact.
Again, the same type of theme here, right? Focus on the business and work together with the business to define what success looks like, right? To align. So in the end, we have a common theme here, right? We are building data science organizations that have a skew towards the business, that identify high impact projects together with the business, that prioritize them together with the business. And in the end, they also align KPIs. In the case of Fahim, I mean, you mentioned, right, when you started working, it was more about the advertising, but you've shifted the focus a little bit to more strategic goals, right? This is another type of goal. So how was it for you in terms of creating impact in ProSieben? What's the criteria?
So first of all, I have to totally agree with Mario. Measuring the impact is not not easy because they're apart from those variables we are influencing with our models, there are other variables which are not under our influence. In the case of Mario, it was like the campaign selection maybe on the one side and the campaign material on the other side. In our case, it is, if you talk about targeting for ads, then it's the same thing, right? I mean, we can have a very perfect algorithm to identify the right user online to place the right ad, but the ad itself can be, you know, good or bad, whatever. And the result, the measurable result for the advertiser is impacted by many things. So it's not easy at the end of the day to isolate the impact, the pure impact of a specific algorithm or a specific case. I mean, we can come close, but it's not, especially in the political environment of a corporate group, it's not easy to really isolate the positive impact data can have, data or call it AI. So coming back to your question with regard to the areas, yeah, I mean, ProSieben has an interesting history. So we have also, apart from the broadcasting industry, broadcasting part, entertainment part, the so-called e-commerce part within our group. I don't know if someone from Germany is here, but there are a few quite well-known entities like Flaconi or Parship, which is from the dating area, belong to ProSieben. However, as I said in the beginning, we have to focus because we do not have infinitely resources. So we said our core is entertainment. So we should focus on the core product, and the core product means content. And on content, we have several variables we can touch. That's like selection of content. That's obviously placing of content. I mean, when should which content and which platform be available to users? And there's also the whole aspect of planning it. So if you have like one piece of content, like let's say a very famous show in Germany is Germany, and ProSieben is Germany's Next Top Model. So what is behind and before that piece of content in order to maximize reach? So we are definitely focusing a lot on the content area, but again, we can optimize, let's say, how to place it, where to place it, but we do not have really impact on the content itself. And in the entertainment industry, there's also this long-standing, and I believe in it, content is king. So we can do a lot, but if the content is not pulling users or viewers, attracting them, then we cannot have an impact. So it's a play together with the colleagues from the content area, and that is the part where it's getting really interesting from an AI perspective, because obviously beyond the pure, let's say, big data numbers, we can now start things like video mining. Means like understanding what happens actually in a video, right? And then combine this with usage data. This will give us a much better view, or more in-depth view into what our users actually want to see, right? So, but this again, I mean, sounds all very interesting on paper and makes a lot of sense on paper. Making it happen is a different game, or to say it in entertainment words like Pulp Fiction, that's even played in a different stadium.
Okay, so again, if I understood you right, in your case, it's understanding how to improve your core business, which is delivering that content, the right content to the right people, right? Mm-hmm. In the case of Mario, apart from the hard KPIs, it's more about aligning with the different business units and maybe improving the customer experience, how they interact with the company in a pleasurable way or more cost-efficient way, right? Then it's in your projects, you have many different types of clients. How do you work it out to make sure that you choose the right projects that can be measured, and then you can prove the value of those initiatives?
Questions to me?
Yeah.
So the selection of projects is, as said, along those value creation criteria. And it's, to be honest, again, it's not so much, I mean, we cannot do everything at the same time. So we can select the project which is A, feasible, and B, valuable. But we are not yet looking at C, are the KPIs really well objectively measurable? I mean, first of all, we try to do the right thing and get a step forward with that, and then we try to optimize, let's say, the end of the chain, right? I mean, to refer to Mario again, it's not that user experience wouldn't be important for us, right? It's important as hell that the user finds himself on our platforms. But as I said, so we start with the core product and then move on from the AI wise, right? I don't want to make created a wrong impression to the audience here. Obviously,
yes,
there are lots of people working on a product, on user experience and everything, but I'm just talking on the AI perspective. So AI wise, we are focusing on the core of the core product, which is the content itself, and that should help us to make one step forward.
Thanks, Fahim. Yes, Dennis.
Yeah, just a couple of words in the sake of time. So focusing on core business functions is a general topic, and here the good old value chain analysis helps. I like to simplify it, and when I talk about value chains, I usually I don't necessarily lay out every specific function. More about separated in three categories. One is get stuff, another one is make stuff, and the third one is get rid of stuff. And in the first one, you can find procurement and recruitment, for example. And the second one is, generally speaking, the core functions, let's say produce content, or provide services for telecommunication, or produce any kind of machinery and whatever. And get rid of stuff, it's mostly marketing, sales, and logistics, and so on. So when you lay out different functions and use cases along the value chain, you can quickly see actually what matters to you. And even if you don't know the industry, as a consultant, I don't know every specific industry, of course. Usually in one or two workshops with a client, it becomes very clear what do they care about. And that's the very broad rule of thumb, I would say, but that also works usually. You ask people what they care about, which KPIs drive them, and like on the basis of which kind of numbers and trends they make decisions on the C level, let's say. And this is how you generally can identify pretty quickly what actually matters in business. With my clients, I use 4 value models for those to see how those KPIs change depending on which nature they have. And those can be based on different activities, steps that people take in business processes. They can be also based on the speed of those processes, or certain, let's say, decision-making capabilities of the organization. Performance is the next value model, and you can think about, let's say, conversion rates in regard of performance. And the fourth one is about risk, generally relevant for financial services companies and insurance companies, but also pharmaceuticals sometimes when you're talking about fines for breaking compliance rules and so on. Basically, it's about define how much you can get fined, what's the probability of it, and how much you can avoid with AI. In every specific case, there are different application areas, let's say, in terms of activities. You can say, well, how much you can automate with machine learning in terms of, let's say, approving an invoice or approving a purchase requisition. And if you can do this in 20, 30, 50% of cases, it will mean that your people will have to spend less time on it and accelerate the whole thing. And you can kind of recalculate how much value it will bring in. In broad terms, I would say that's it.
Dennis, you brought in methodology, right? Value chain analysis, and looking into these 4 value types of models to identify, which are your projects.
Sure.
Again, it's to be expected by an expert to bring a good framework to select the right projects. The last theme here was about organization. We have touched upon it a little bit, Overall, I'll just introduce it quickly. All our guests struggle big time in getting the right data scientists. This is a very, very scarce resource. And one of the struggles is how to make the job appealing, hiring, and how to retain them. And they're only retained if there's a degree of innovation there, right? So, Fahim, you had a view on that, right? On innovation and the challenges of having it or not having it, right? In terms of attracting the right data science.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what we can see after, I mean, the part of our organization which tackles AI, which I belong to, is maybe 3 years old, and now we see actually after 3 years we see how churn within our colleagues or within the employee base is developing. And as you said, it's less the question of money or safety in terms of I have a good working place. It's, I mean, especially for those kind of people, it's rather the question of, am I at the forefront of the development, right? Am I working on some old-fashioned on-premise machines, or am I working on AWS or Google Cloud or whatever? Am I sharing and am I collaborating with the rest of the world who's working on AI, or am I just, you know, here in Unterföhring in our case, which is the north of Munich? This is probably the most important part. Of course, you have to offer a competitive package, but it's rather the question to offering them the right projects.
And you mentioned a balance between short-term results that might be very relevant for the company, right? But in some cases might not be as appealing as R&D to bring the cutting-edge innovation. And you need to strike a balance, right, between these two?
Absolutely. So for the retention, the innovation part is much more important. But for the company, obviously, we have like the more boring tasks and the innovative tasks, and that's always keeping the balance between the two from two different angles. I mean, with talking about talents, maybe within Germany, in Munich, it's not so bad. There's a little bit of talent there because also Amazon is in Munich, Google is in Munich, a lot of startups around Munich. But yeah, I mean, that is why we have also a value creation process, because we need to really be very serious where we allocate our resources on which project, because otherwise we have to buy it from the external market, which is even more expensive, and yeah, we know all the consequences.
Mario, what's your take on this?
Well, I already mentioned that obviously, you know, giving this the scientist a purpose, it's key, and getting them closer to the business to collaborate and see what the impact is it's proven to be key on this. So basically, as the business is transitioning to agile squad systems, obviously locating your data scientist on the business squads, and having that organizational model whereby you're going to have a side which is the implementation and a side which is the development, and you have, so to speak, a lead data scientist, which is your guru while you're developing, but then you have a leg, which is, okay, this is my manager where I implement things. So this kind of two heads that they have to see, and they have to understand that they have to go through the whole process. It's important. So organizationally, if you don't have squads, just implant your data scientist in teams that works. That's one part. The purpose side is important. Okay, I try to look more and more into projects that give these young kids a sense that they're developing something important, because for these new generations it's more and more important. For us in Vodafone during the pandemic, it was well known that not only us as Vodafone, but the rest of telecom operators, we collaborated extensively with the government in order to provide mobility information and to see the impact of when they were doing lockdown, how much the percentage of the mobility was going down, and then therefore what were the predictions on how the next waves were going to be, and what was the time that they should lift, etc. we were recognized and praised for that, and the impact in the team of that recognition and feeling that they had some kind of impact in something that was socially so important. It was amazing in terms of how the data science team felt in Spain. Now we're launching a project where we want to have a module in all of our models for equality. So is there any bias in our models in terms of if there's gender, origin, etc., etc.? You keep that element of them feeling that they're doing something meaningful, and it has a huge impact in the ability that you have to retain people. And last but not least, I want to share an experience that I had yesterday with one of my data scientists. He called me and said, "Hey Mario, look what GitHub is developing." And he showed me, and he just texted in what he wanted in natural language. He pressed enter, and automatically he got 26 lines of code. And he said, coding is going to be irrelevant in the future. So it goes again to show that those people in this area that are able to have those soft skills to interact with the business, to be interested on the impact of what they're doing, and not just in excelling in coding and technically, that soft skill part of it is going to prove to be the people that are going to be more engaged and more successful in the big data sphere.
Brilliant. That's another angle then, right? So to see beyond the project, not something larger than just that specific algorithm or that specific piece of work, right? And the recognition that comes from it. Mm-hmm. Great input, Mario. Thanks, Mario, and thanks, Fahim. Dennis, anything you would like to share before we close session?
Yeah, just a couple of words probably. One is the junior-senior divide that exists between data scientists quite a lot. It's a relatively new field. Well, frankly, in this new incarnation, it exists since 2012, let's say. So there are a lot of juniors that are fresh out of university and have never seen a real enterprise data set. Generally speaking, they would need some guidance if you hire them because, well, enterprise data sets, as everybody knows, are never clean, are never easy to work with, and sometimes may be frustrating for a beginner data scientist to work with. That's probably one important point to remember. And another one, I can support Mario on what he's talking about, impact and the feeling that you're changing something and doing something meaningful. That's absolutely the case. What I have seen many times in many companies working with data scientists are the internal events that provide that feeling, that, let's say, knowledge sharing, weekly, bi-weekly sessions for knowledge sharing between data scientists, software developers, meetups, webinars, hackathons, tech days that allow people to work one day per month, for example, on what they want to do and not necessarily only on what company wants them to do. Those things are relatively small, relatively inexpensive for the organization, and can make wonders. Like people, I've seen many times, like on sites like Kununu, which serves different reviews from employees and companies, how amazing those tech days and so on are, and how they improve morale and so on and so forth.
Great.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm super pleased to hear that each one of you has contributed in a specific angle on the same objective. So all of these ideas converge into a common need, right? How to keep people motivated and retain them. And those are very practical and real tips, the ones you just shared now, Dennis, which can complete Fahim's way of work in terms of the innovation and the ideation processes, and Mario's way of work also. Great. I think we will literally run out of time. I don't know if there's any specific question that somebody would like to launch. Let's wait a little bit. If not, I would like to say, as we finalize the session, you will receive, there's a little questionnaire, three questions. I would ask you, please, if the audience could just give us some feedback on those three questions, and it will be very helpful for us. I don't know if we have any questions at this stage. We did literally run out of time. You did predict this, Dennis. Okay, Adam says, what is the key factor for a successful AI model? Whoa, that's a broad question. a key factor for a successful AI model?
Good data.
Data to implement it, and possibly business alignment, no? To make sure that everybody is aligned in the objective of the model, no?
Yep.
I would add that you have enough space to do trial and error, at least in the way we work. We really need, I mean, in the beginning, we don't know if it's going to work. That's why we have those phases of ideation, specification, and then so we need a lot of trial and error with, as Dennis said, with a real enterprise data set, because sometimes they're a little bit awkward or not complete or whatever. So yeah, trial and error.
I agree. I totally agree with that. Okay, I think that I was going to say right before Fahim mentioned that you need a little bit of patience. Yeah. Going back to the expectations, they think that the minute that you develop a model, business expects that it's going to add value right on, and you have to explain that it's basically a 3-step process. Yes, you developed it, but then there is a process of implementation, which means a ping pong game of A/B testing and a lot of optimizing and a lot of fine tuning that can take 2 weeks, but it can take 2 months. It can take even more until you can say that a model that an AI model is really mature to be put into production and put into a different category of BAU and have it managed in a different way, which only needs monitoring. And that middle step is oftentimes ignored. Brilliant. And you tend to put into production immediately a model just the minute that the data science finished it. It's a recipe for disaster.
So that's not even a data science topic. It's a cultural agile mindset, right?
Oh yeah.
In the new way of work, where you set up teams and projects, trial and error is something that has to be allowed, and specifically in your case, it's more important.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, I can only support that. But whenever I work with clients and they ask me for project duration estimate, I'm always very vague, not because I don't want to tell them, but because I don't know. And if any data scientist tells you, yeah, it's going to take definitely 2 months, not more, they're lying to you. I mean, they're just lying to you because they don't know either. Because even if it's a known use case, they've never seen your data, like for that matter. And if your data is not great, then well, good luck cleaning it for the next 3 months. So I can only support both Fahim and Mario. That's a huge topic: iteration, experimentation. I always try to educate my clients on saying, well, data science is experimental discipline. It's never precise. You have to have some patience and try to set up the expectation in a way that, well, it might work quickly, but maybe not.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Fahim. Thanks a lot, Mario. Thanks a lot, Dennis. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
If any of the audience has further questions, just send them to us. We'll get them answered. And if you need to talk to any of our guests or have maybe Dennis's opinion on how he would approach a need that you might have, let us know and we'll connect you. Thanks a lot for the session. Please answer the questionnaire. 3 questions, should be pretty fast. And yeah, thanks a lot again for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.